Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is Ariana, and I have been compiling a list of my favorite New Girl episodes. And though I am not finished with that list, I felt too passionately about this episode to not give it the attention it deserves. So here it is, arguably one of the best episodes of New Girl. Season 4, episode 22, the season finale. So we start the episode with Coach packing as he is about to head to New York with his girlfriend May. This is big, as last episode Coach admitted his love for May, which was an important character arc for him. A character arc examines the flaws a character needs to overcome, and Coach is a character who has struggled to have meaningful relationships with women. But now, he has finally learned to have an intimate relationship with a woman, abandoning his womanizing ways. In the previous episode, however, one of Coach's reasons for being hesitant to go to New York with her is that he is currently living with the gang, and finally feels like he has a home. That's the word he uses, home. And this is an important piece of dialogue, as Coach is an army brat who moved around his whole life, which perfectly segues into the plot of episode 22. That touches upon themes of intimacy. After moving multiple times, Coach has a system of making a clean break and only taking the essentials. This introduces a broad A-plot that allows for all subsequent subplots to occur smoothly. The A-plot in the show is the central focus of the story. However, it most typically concerns the lead character, which New Girl will subvert in this episode by putting Coach in the center. According to TV Calling, the ABC stories will often be divided based on characters and themes. So in this episode, our stories are Coach and Winston, Schmidt, and Nick and Jess. And all scenes will have a thread of what intimacy and connection is and feels like. So, not only does this broad A-plot set up the structure of the episode, but it gives us one final important arc that Coach has to undergo. His friendship with everyone else. So Jess enters in a cat sweater, giving him a parting gift of a cube with pictures of them, saying that last time he came back, he forgot who she was. This gives us a funny callback to when Coach returned to the show and had completely forgotten who Jess was. This helps create a sense of closure in the show as a whole, making it a sort of bookend episode. It is Coach's rejection of the gift that helps us learn about what this clean break system is. Moving on, we get a cute comedic scene of Jess trying to set up something special for Coach and only Winston putting in the effort, because he's Winston, and he's great in this episode. So then Coach has gathered all the guys around the table so that they can all put his clean break system into practice and try to get rid of some of their crap. This specific scene makes nearly every other scene in the episode possible. It focuses on Nick in order to continue the story and set up his plot with Jess, and the show brilliantly uses comedy to emphasize his role in the next few scenes. He says that he can't get rid of stuff because all of his stuff is really good, and nobody agrees with that. But with closed eyes and hand motions, he rejects being a hoarder and says in regards to his stuff that everything has meaning, everything is connected to something else.
Hoarder. Not true. Everything has meaning. Everything is connected to something else.
You need to be hard on yourself.
Hilarious. When Coach pushes him to just try and get rid of stuff, we get a classic boner joke when Nick says he's gonna get hard and fix himself.
Gonna get hard and fix myself.
What?
That's no.
The guys question his wording, but the joke comes back later, and I'll talk about that in a second. So while Nick is packing his stuff together, we get some more story development. Winston sees a pan in Coach's toss pile and reminds him of the memory they shared because of that pan. Now, Winston and Coach always had an important and funny relationship, if not solely for the hilarious behind scene with them in an older episode.
Behind. Whoa, behind.
Winston and Coach's friendship was important for New Girl as it gave them an opportunity to re-immerse Coach into the show. So once again, we get this sense of closure through this paralleling plot of his friendship with Winston as he is about to leave the show. After Coach rejects the idea of the pan, Nick returns with the crap from his room, asking if it's essential. With this, we get Coach's participation in the boner joke.
I need you to get harder, Nick. Can you get harder for me?
What?
Do you need me to get harder with you?
And this is great because it gives us that famous homoeroticism that New Girl always delivers on. Okay, so more story development. Nick has brought with him Schmidt's CC box, introducing his subplot for the episode. Now before we unpack this, get it? Let's reflect on Schmidt's storyline in the previous episode. In episode 21, Schmidt is dating Fawn, a politician who is more concerned with her and Schmidt's image than their relationship. We basically spent the entire season watching Schmidt be treated like a pet, as Fawn controls him and demands a lot from him. If you think about it, it was sort of a punishment for Schmidt's character in repentance for cheating on Cece. This is important because Cece has just realized she is in love with him and cannot stand to see him with Fawn. But finally, in episode 21, when Fawn casually explains her plan to put Schmidt in rehab and marry him afterwards, long story, Schmidt, who has endured everything Fawn wants, finally says no. Even when she swears she'll be powerful and he'll be rich if they do this, Schmidt realizes he wants love. He wants something real and has fully understood what it means for someone to take advantage of you, like he did with Cece and Elizabeth when he cheated on them. He has decided he wants love and that Fawn cannot give him that, so he breaks up with her. Not just that, but he realizes that reputation and image don't defeat love, and that his worship of money and being rich still comes second to love. And that's a big step for his character that allows for episode 22 to grant him his happy ending. So when the gang sees his Cece box, Nick finds a loose $5 bill which Schmidt says was the same $5 he put in the douchebag jar the night he met Cece. But he doesn't say what he said to her. When he asks what he says, Nick and Coach both say something silly, but Winston says,
Betty says something chauvinistic that comes from insecurities, but ultimately leads to something endearing.
It doesn't matter what I said.
though this is obviously meant as a joke and it succeeds at being funny, it also delivers an important message to the audience. You see, by the end of this episode, Schmidt and Cece will be engaged, and the show knows it's not easy to just grant a past cheater his dream woman. So, in addition to spending the seasons after their breakup dedicated to cultivating a friendship between Schmidt and Cece, Winston making this joke highlights the fact that Schmidt has never been a bad guy. He is just an insecure man who never truly learned his worth and simply used wealth and appearance as a measure of value. So when you see Cece and Schmidt get engaged, you don't instantly think, but he cheated on you, you can't do this. Instead, you think, this man has changed and has always loved this woman, who has always loved him in spite of his flaws. See, I told you that Winston is great in this episode, and this is just another example of how comedy should add to the story. So, scene change. We get our next piece of story development when Winston pleads to Jess that they inform Cece about Schmidt and Fawn's breakup. Jess gives us the backstory that Cece is off literally climbing a mountain, Mount Shasta, and has no cell reception. We get a really nice piece of character development for Jess when she refuses to get involved and wants to support Cece's decision. This season had already touched upon Jess's meddling, for example with her dad's relationship in episode 3, so it's nice to see her show some boundaries as a character and support her friend. Then we get another great scene with Winston as he flexes his smooth phone skills while informing Cece through voicemail of Schmidt's breakup.
Hey, yo, Cease, what up, fam? It's your girl, Winston, a.k.a. Winnie the Bitch, a.k.a. Brown Lightning. Schmidt dropped Fawn like a bad habit, okay? So ain't nobody riding shotgun. So you better get on while the getting is good. You got it?
Okay, so now we get our final piece of story development. Nick and Jess's sex mug. Gross. Not like that, you guys. The gang finds the mug in the pile of Nick's stuff and Jess explains that when she and Nick were dating, it was a way for them to secretly communicate that they wanted to have sex. Now, I think one of the reasons New Girl is as great as it is because every line is not only perfectly tailored for each weird character, but the specific line delivery by each actor is near perfection, I would say. And I think that's really highlighted when Nick says the mug was
Just a way to let each other know we were aroused without arousing suspicion. That's wordplay. It's also a free writing lesson.
When one of us
The way he pauses in between his words and then folds his hands down professionally is hilarious, but it's when the camera stays on him for a split second longer to capture his pompous smile that the line delivery hits even harder. It also shows how comedy should be natural in showcasing someone's personality. Nick makes this joke because he is a writer and a very not successful one, and that is what makes the joke funnier. You can't just give a character a funny line that their character wouldn't make. Jokes should be just as tailored to an individual as any other piece of dialogue, and New Girl understands that. So Schmidt asks for clarification that the mug is no longer being used, and when Nick and Jess agree, Winston shouts wrong and announces that he saw that same mug in use just last week. To prove it, he mentions that he caught proof of the mug in one of his weekly selfies with Ferguson, his cat. Another element of New Girl that I think is comedically strong is when a character has a small reaction to another character. You know, those lines that are short responses, ones of shock or disgust, or in this case, disappointment, that are funny because they are so quick and are a shortcut from the main scene. The show does this a lot, and it's those scenes that usually kill me the most. Nick does just this after Winston mentions his scheduled selfie with Ferguson with a short, pity-filled, "Oh, Winston."
Fire off my rocker. Would I take a weekly selfie with my cat?
Oh, Winston.
This joke is short but perfect and contributes to the running gag in the show of Winston's relationship with his cat. When Schmidt and Coach accuse Jess of putting out the mug, Nick shouts that it was him who put the mug out, and he storms off, even though we come to find out in the next scene that it was Jess who put out the mug. This is one of the many examples since their breakup that Nick sacrifices something for Jess or helps her because he literally loves her. But this time around, there is a sexual element. Though I could literally go off on a tangent about Jess and Nick's dynamic, I'm going to stick to talking about the comedy in this scene when Jess tries to thank Nick and talk to him about why she put the mug out.
No harm, no foul.
Wow.
We didn't bone. No bone, no phone home.
Great. So we're cool.
I'm cool if you're cool.
Fantastic. I'm going to knit a scarf for Coach.
I'm sure he'll love it.
Okay, fine.
Thanks for the chat.
Sayonara. Hey, Nick. Do you want to know why I put the mug
We're
out?
cool.
We're cool.
Go knit that scarf.
Literally the most awkward conversation ever. But what else can you expect from two people who were never very suave in their relationship to begin with? It's a defining trait of their dynamic. They always were and always will be the weird couple. This scene confronts their relationship and connection, but the two characters present their awkward, quirky style to soften the seriousness of just wanting to sleep with Nick, and adds to their overall chemistry as a couple, as even when they are friends, they share this dynamic that we love. And also him saying, "Go knit that scarf" the way that he does makes me laugh every time. After this, we cut to Schmidt's plot, which has started to unfold. He is at a donations drop area about to rid himself of his CC box. He looks at it for a moment before dropping it in, but immediately regrets it and wants it back. Meanwhile, Winston amusingly tries to convince Coach to take the pan with him by using it to make crepes. So now, the episode has found a rhythm in terms of presenting and weaving each storyline together. When Coach yeets the pan away, we get a funny line delivery from Winston of him saying rude, but when Coach once again explains his system, Winston changes his tone completely.
Clean break. You know what? Fine, Coach. Don't take it with you. Leave everything behind. Try not to remember any. We are non-essential. Message received.
Having Winston start the scene comically but leave the scene in a serious tone and storming off gives Coach a moment of silence to have a change of heart and allows the episode's general theme of intimacy to echo. But then Winston comes back and does something stupid but silly because he's Winston. We get some slapstick comedy of Schmidt fighting to open the donation box, and even though it is funny, this joke is literally him fighting for Cece, which is what he's always done. Once again, using comedy perfectly tailored to the character to advance the character's personality and conflict. Cut back to Jess as she explains to Nick why and when she set the mug out. Then Jess seriously asks,
Nick, is there anything that I do that makes you think about putting the mug out?
Her asking this is important, specifically because in the previous episode, Nick delivered a small speech to Coach about who you see yourself in bed next to in 50 years, when you're old and gray. When Jess heard that, she asked Nick who he sees in that scenario, and though she is asking seriously, Nick says Winston mostly, and she laughs along, but Jess doesn't get an answer, and neither do we. Here, Jess once again tries to get an answer from Nick. She wants to know if he wants her, but Nick tells her no. He had a clean break from her, so Jess leaves the room.
Clean break, I agree.
After this, we cut back to Schmidt,
I need that box back, Wally. I need it back more than anything else I've ever needed in my life.
and he says he needs this box more than anything else he's ever needed in his life, and it being a box of Cece's things literally translates this to Cece being what Schmidt wants more than anything else, what he needs more than money, more than his image. He is saying he loves her without actually saying he loves her, and the urgency of this affection builds more. Back at the loft, Coach holds a bigger suitcase, and when he pats it, Winston hears the clank of the pan. He says he is just bringing things to fill up space, and with that, Coach has completed his arc, learning intimacy and vulnerability not only in his romantic relationships, but his friendships. Then, Nick comes to Jess's room and admits that he has thought about Jess sexually since their breakup. But more importantly, Nick calls for Jess to admit that she wants him to be thinking about her. So now, in the entirety of their timeline, the show has reestablished their sexual dynamic. So here is where we reach the sort of climax in the episode. A disappointed and boxless Schmidt interrupts to express to Nick and Jess that he needs to let go of Cece, as he feels he has truly lost her. Jess fights the urge to tell him that Cece loves him, so instead she tells Nick, who was standing right beside him. Then Schmidt is about to leave the loft in search of Cece when he opens the door to find her standing there. She says that on top of the mountain she finally received the voicemails from Winston and Jess. Let's look at this for a second. After reading a book about a woman climbing Mount Shasta, Cece decides to do the same in order to find herself. But the real reason is that it hurts her to see Fawn and Schmidt together, because she sees that he is happy and she loves him too much to ruin what he has. Now, I don't see this as a criticism of women who venture to another location to find themselves, but rather an important moment for Cece's character development and a way to touch upon the misconception that a woman's love for a man makes her weak. The fact of the matter is, she does go to that mountain. And the important piece of information she gives is that she even got to the top of it. She physically completed this task, and climbing that mountain to find herself is about her conquering her fear of her feelings for Schmidt. It is on top of the mountain, which is meant to be an accomplishment, that she hears the voicemails, which provides a sort of symbolism here that finding herself means pursuing her relationship with Schmidt, to recognize that he is part of her life and her heart, and to establish that she is not weak because of that. She's standing at the top of a mountain when she learns that she may have a chance with him. It is her understanding and her courage that prompt her to come back to the loft and finally tell him how she feels. Not to mention, Cece has also struggled with vulnerability and serious relationships in general, the same way Coach and Schmidt have. So here she is, standing in front of Schmidt, and he tells her that he loves her, and she tells him that she loves him too. He reflects on the stupid thing he said to her that night that he met her, before getting down on one knee to nearly repeat it. "Girl, will you marry me?" And she says yes, letting herself love. Coach says goodbye to his friends, telling them that he loves them and will miss them. Nick and Jess throw the mug in the trash, and we get a great scene of Schmidt crying because he is the poster child for more sensitive, not stereotypically masculine men, which is a hilarious and beautiful direction that the show chose to go in with his character. That night, Nick goes to see if the mug is still in the trash and sees it missing. Minutes later, Jess does the same. But some dramatic irony shows us that Winston has the mug in his room and Ferguson is drinking milk out of it. So what are we left here with all of this? Well, we have said goodbye to a character, and though he wasn't on the show for very long, he was still given a proper character arc and underwent a transformation, stepping into the show after a bad breakup and leaving the show in a healthy, happy relationship. We have a couple who have had their issues, both come to terms with their innermost desire and set aside their vulnerabilities, fear, insecurities, and distractions to not only recognize their love, but finally commit to it in the most meaningful way. And we have Nick and Jess, the other couple that no one ever lost hope for, besides them. Except now that hope has been reinserted into the show, into their own mindsets, and will mark the start of a new direction in their relationship. And of course, Winston. Now, Winston is the only one who doesn't have any romantic storyline here. Well, besides him and Ferguson. But he was quite literally the soul of this episode. His lack of a romantic plot allowed him to be in the middle of every storyline and push the story forward. It is Winston who teaches Coach that his system isn't substantial and that his friendships are valuable. It is Winston that persuades Jess to call Cece, and he himself delivers the news about Schmidt's breakup, pushing Cece to come back. And by exposing them, it is Winston who allows for the confrontation between Nick and Jess to occur, and indirectly instills a speck of hope into them in terms of the relationship. So, yeah, this is probably one of the best examples of why New Girl is such a strong show. It not only understands the area of conflict in each character's life, but delivers it in a natural and quirky comedic style that we all adore. New Girl knows how to have comedy act as a contribution to the story, and ultimately deliver on the three things that sitcoms do best: love, jokes, and above all, friendship. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys liked this video, and if you love New Girl, I hope I did the show justice. Let me know if you want more videos about New Girl, because like I said, I watch it all the time and I love it. Thanks for watching.